Hey everybody, welcome to the Scene Snobs interviews. And today I'm joined by a very special guest, and I'm very excited to talk to him about his new book, which is the first book to cover Shemp Howard, probably one of the most famous Three Stooges, and the oldest brother. So I am very excited to talk to him. Mr. Geoff Dale is on the show. How are you today, sir?
I'm good. It's up in Canada. It's still relatively mild, so we're hanging on to the summer. That's a good thing for me.
Well, I got to ask though, so for us, it was 44 degrees outside when I woke up this morning. For us, that's we have lost summer at all control.
Oh,
But up in Canada, what is it like holding on to it?
well, okay. Up in Canada, of course, they changed to Celsius, but I'm old school. I'm still Fahrenheit. So I'd say right now it's about 60 degrees, I'd say approximately.
Nice.
And it's supposed to go up a little. It's supposed to go up into the 70s all week.
Well, that's good. All right, so you really are holding on to the summer.
Well, it's and of course I'm glued to my computer right now. All things Shemp. That's what my life is.
All things Shemp, and I'm very excited to talk about this. Now, the Three Stooges are near and dear to my heart because growing up, that's how my father and I connected. We connected through the Three Stooges and Abbott and Costello. And
Right.
Shemp was always the one that my father would point out because he would pop up in other movies. I know
Hmm.
he was in a couple of Abbott and Costello movies and other comedies. So like every time he did, my father was like, "That's Shemp," you know. And so I'm very excited to talk to you today about him, considering you're writing the only book about Shemp.
Right. Well, it is kind of unusual because I had written one sort of a fiction book a while ago, which was self-published on Larry Fine. The fact that when he grew up, he was a boxer. He was when he was a young man, fighting under another name because he didn't want his parents to find out. But Shemp came up, and I thought, I've always liked Shemp for some reason. When my family first moved from England to Canada, that was the one thing my father especially said, "Oh, no, 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 you're not watching any of those Three Stooges. All they do is slap and hit and poke each other in the eyes. That's not good." Only if my father would have lived longer and he would have seen how violent movies are now,
Yeah.
he would have thought the Stooges were like a Mother Teresa. They're just very, very mild mannered. But Shemp always interested me, and precisely over the years, the same reason as your father would have, because he was in 105 solo films. Now, I'm not saying he's the star of them, but he was a part of about 105 films, in addition to the 77 or so Stooge films that he was in. And on top of that, to get the ball rolling, the original trio, which was started by Ted Healy, which became the Stooges, was in fact Shemp, Moe, and then later, a little later, Larry. Curly came after the fact. Curly's great, by the way. This book is not in any way, shape, or form denigrating any of the Stooges because I've got time for all of them. But Shemp was in fact a true original. So that's kind of what my book is about, in a sense.
So if I remember correctly, and again, a lot of this comes from my dad, like growing up. Because again, like it was always fun to connect and learn about old Hollywood from him. But like you
Mhm.
said, there's no books about Shemp, so I have to take the information with a grain of salt. But he was the older brother, and Mo and Curly were younger brothers, correct?
Yeah, well, there were five brothers actually. The two elder brothers ended up in the insurance business, and one of them actually kept the original family name, which was Horowitz. And Shemp, of course, was born Samuel Horowitz. So Shemp was the third oldest. He was older than Mo by a couple of years, and Curly was, in fact, the baby. Curly, of course, was Jerome, and Mo was, in fact, Harry Moses. So Mo became his name, and Shemp became Shemp because his mother, who had a very strong Lithuanian accent, when she was calling him either for dinner or just to come in, when she yelled his name out, Sam or Samuel, it sounded to his friends and his brothers like she was yelling out Shemp. And so the name stuck. So who knows if his mother ever realized at any point, I'm sure she did, that she, in fact, was the inventor of the name Shemp. So Samuel Horowitz, or if you want to go by the strictly Jewish name, Shmuel Horowitz, became Shemp Howard. And that's how we all know and love him for. Sam became Shemp. And that's a little bit of information that all Stooge fanatics will know, but I'm sure those who don't know much about the Stooges. And by the way, part of this book really is intended, I'm hoping, to attract people who really are not what I would call Stoogeaholics. I'd like to see people out there say, oh, I didn't know that. This guy seems to have really done quite a bit other than the Stooges. So,
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. That's what I'm hoping for.
Well, and I am very interested. I'm always interested. I take to books like, about actors in old Hollywood and such are really interesting. Mm-hmm. And this would definitely be one of them. So I'm very much looking forward to it. But if I could ask a few questions about Shemp,
sure.
During your time, he left pretty early on, pretty early on into the movie career, correct? The Three Stooges, mm-hmm. And he went into his own solo career.
Yeah, basically, they weren't the Stooges at the time. They were Ted Healy and his Southern Gentleman. He had another name, and right off the top of my head, of course, it escapes me. But anyway, they appeared in a movie called Soup to Nuts. And Shemp, for all intents and purposes, he wasn't what I would call the leader of the group. But marginally, you could say he was the more dominant of the three, which is unusual because everyone remembers Mo as being dominant. But at that point, they weren't the Three Stooges. Now, the film was released on DVD a few decades ago. And of course, it sort of showcased it as being Ted Healy and the Three Stooges, which historically, that's not correct. But for the intention of getting people interested, it was the original group. After that, after a little bit, some financial differences and some business. There's always these rumors out there that Shemp didn't like being bullied by Ted Healy. Ted Healy, by the way, was much bigger. He was anywhere between 5'10" and 6 foot tall. He was a huge name back then. Anyway, Shemp, according to the family members I've talked to, he wasn't afraid of Ted Healy, and all those rumors out there about him being a bully and doing this and that. Not true. I mean, he had his own personal demons, like a lot of people in show business too. But it seemed like Shemp just wanted to get out there. He wanted to get on his own. And apparently, from what I've been told by his granddaughter and his daughter-in-law, his wife sort of egged him on a little. Try it out, Shemp. You can do it. So I'll let you ask the next question. But we take that story into about I should have the exact figures in front of me. Let's say he's 35, 36, thereabouts, or around that. He got into Vitaphone, which was a division of Columbia Pictures. And that's where the story starts.
Now, when he went into Vitaphone, what was his career trajectory, if you will, then? Because I know I remember him from, and it wasn't by any means like bit parts, but he was a face in there. Especially one of my favorite scenes from an Abbott and Costello movie, In the Navy. I think he plays the cook, and they're doing it's almost like find the potato or lemon underneath the cups, and he, of course, Abbott and Costello are doing their con, but the facial expressions that Shemp has in that scene where he sees everybody getting duped by him is classic. He had some great expressions to him.
He was a wonderful physical comedian, and also too, I know a lot of people may not know this. He was also known for being a very good ad-libber. And that's something people today should be interested in, because this is a generation, at least my generation, sort of has grown up with people like George Carlin and Robin Williams, and a lot of really, really very, very clever sort of people who could do improv. Improv is sort of the word for my generation, I think, in some sense. And so Shemp was very good at that. And just to give you a sense, without going through the whole role of what he did, when he started off with with Vitaphone. You know, it was mainly sort of smaller bit parts in that. But I'll give you some of the names he appeared with. Jack Haley. 5 years later, he was the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
Lionel Stander, for anyone who remembers, he's been in all kinds of movies. But Lionel Stander ended up being, let me see, Robert Wagner's chauffeur and handyman in a show called Heart to Heart. Many years ago. Him and Stephanie Powers, I guess, was his co-star. That's another person. He did an independent film during his Vitaphone days with another one from Wizard of Oz 5 years down the road, Bert Lahr. And here's one this is a real killer. In 1934, he did a film with someone who was absolutely unknown. Nobody'd heard of him. In fact, he wasn't even credited. His name was James Stewart. James Stewart's first film was in a Shemp short called Art Trouble. So that's where he got his start. And a few years down the road, lo and behold, Jimmy Stewart, or James if you prefer, he's an Oscar winner. But he got his start with Shemp. And where he ended up with the Vitaphone films, and which shows how far he'd come, he was in a series that was signed. It was the Joe Palooka series, about a rather naive sort of country bumpkin who becomes the heavyweight champ in the world. There was supposed to be 9 of them made. Well, the bottom line is, Shemp, his entire life, was a huge boxing fan. He used to go to the fights when he was a young man. Later in Los Angeles, apparently, he'd go to the fights, and people were more entertained by him in the front row, because he used to get up, do a little, I like to call it a Shemp shuffle, a little before the Ali shuffle. And the cornermen would jump off the ringside and start cooling him off, with water and waving towels at him. So he appears in this Joe Palooka series way back in the 30s. And the star, who did a pretty good job, he didn't really look like a boxer. I'm a boxing fan, so, I'm sad to admit, I hope no one holds that against me. But anyway, but Shemp, as the manager, the trainer, Nobby Walsh, perfect. He absolutely made that series. And so he was really on a roll. So instead of making the last 2 movies or shorts of that series, the 9-film series, he left. And next his stop was, in fact, he moved from New York, where his home was, to the West Coast, where, lo and behold, his brothers are, Curly and Moe, as the Three Stooges, along with his former buddy in the original group, Larry. So the next stop, and you can ask me lots of questions here, is Colombia.
Oh, okay. So where does he take it once he gets to Colombia? So he's still in his social career.
Well, Colombia is a really strange situation because the Columbia Shorts Department was started. The president of Columbia, Harry Cohn, actually, he was intent on getting Jules White to lead this up because he thought this is the perfect guy to do it. Jules White, as most Stooge fanatics know, he was he directed and produced a huge number of Stooge flicks over the years, and actually during during Shemp's stay with Columbia, a few were also done by Jules White too. So it was an interesting mix. Like, a lot of people look at it, and while they like Shemp and they appreciate the fact that he's a wonderful physical comedian, he can ad-lib, a lot of people think, these are both insiders and the public, it always seemed like Shemp was better than the material he was given, which is kind of unfortunate. But having said that, nonetheless, he could, in the words of some of the people I interviewed, he had a talent for making rather mediocre material look good, very passable. There's an old expression, by the way, I'm going by now that I've seen all these Shemp films. Roger Ebert once said, any film that has Harry Dean Stanton and Emmett Walsh in it, it can't be all that bad. You'd watch it. Well, I'm taking it. I've got the Shemp rule now instead of the of Ebert's rule. Any film that's got Shemp Howard in it, I'm going to look at it no matter what. And I'll find something that's good in it. And I guarantee you, I have a huge Shemp library, by the way. Anyone who's interested in me dubbing copies, I'm sure that's illegal. So ignore that completely. But they're available. They're out there. And for anyone who doesn't want to spend a huge amount of money, by the way, go to YouTube. You can get some of the films he made straight off of YouTube. But when he was with Columbia, I mean, he did some wonderful stuff. He appeared with Lon Chaney. They sort of made up what a lot of people call a faux Abbott and Costello. You know, not great, but very interesting. Columbia, he also appeared with Andy Clyde, another very well-known, very enjoyable comedic entertainer. So while people do stress that Columbia wasn't the greatest in terms of the material, it was always interesting if Shemp was in it, because he was truly an interesting actor who had a way, if he was ad-libbing or just by putting that little bit of extra into it. And before I forget, a little before Columbia in 1935, after the rules came out, the code against, or sort of to maintain the ethics of American-made films, believe it or not, Shemp had a dramatic role in a film called Convention Girl, which was an independent film. It's not a great movie. If the code hadn't been put in, I think it would have been a little more exciting. But lo and behold, Shemp appears, sort of nattily dressed. I'm not sure whether he was smoking a cigarette or a cigar. He's got a gun in his pocket. And what he is, he's kind of, it's Atlantic City. He's kind of a small time, he's a hood, he's an embezzler, he's fraudulent in every manner you can think. And he tries to murder his partner in crime by shooting him. So just a little bit of a teaser there. Shemp, unlike the other Stooges, and I know they all wanted to do this, he actually could handle a dramatic role. So Convention Girl, if you're going to go out and buy it or find little clips of it, that's to all the Shemp fans out there. It's not a great film, but look out for Shemp. So he's finished with that. He's finished with Columbia. Then comes Universal. That's the big boys. That's next in the 40s.
And we're because I want to talk to you more about the book and your writing process, but since we're continuing on, so he got in there around the 40s, and then unfortunately passed away in 1955, and he joined the Stooges towards the end of his life, right? Again.
More or less. Fortunately, he did live longer than Curly, and he had a nice little run, but very, very sad that he died that young. But yeah, you're right on that trajectory.
But but to go back real quick to Universal, that was where he started working with Abbott Costello and such, right?
Yeah, he was in, and I don't have my films in front of me. I should do. I think it was either 4 or 5 films. One of them was an independent called Africa Screens. A little bit of irony there, because he appeared in that film with none other than Joe Besser, who would ultimately replace Shemp. Shemp and Joe were quite good friends. And actually, I think, for my way of thinking anyway, I believe that Shemp and Joe actually were quite good as a comedic pair. I think they complemented one another quite well. Joe Besser gets a bad rap on a lot of it because he was the last of the Stooges in the shorts before Joe DeRita came along. And people say, he would. I think Joe Besser actually did his very best, and he actually was very funny in some movies. He also, by the way, has an Abbott Costello connection, because he appeared as the grown-up kid called Stinky in the Abbott Costello TV series. And it's not always my cup of tea, but I got to admit at times it was very, very funny. But Universal, like I said, 4 or 5 Abbott Costello films. He was in one of the Thin Man films as an uncredited role. And for me, it was one of the lesser Thin Man films. But when Shemp comes on at the very last moment to appear with William Powell, who's the Thin Man, of course, it's hilarious. It's wonderful. He appeared in a Charlie Chan flick, another one, totally, it was unbilled. He's in a lineup to find a crook. And he's brilliantly funny. In fact, if anyone watches that, you just have to take a look at first the lineup, then watch the people looking at the so-called criminals. For example, Sidney Toller, who is Charlie Chan, and the other cops, they're all smiling. And I'm thinking to myself, they're just loving this scene because it is so funny. His work with the Universal, I know I'm going to forget a lot of them, but he did so much and he did so many good things. Oh, yes. He appeared with John Wayne, who was a neighbor of his down the road in the west coast of Los Angeles area. And he used to drive him, by the way, to the movie theater or the studios because Shemp didn't drive. The movie was called Pittsburgh. It was a drama, simple as that. It starred John Wayne, Randolph Scott, Marlene Dietrich. Shemp's bit isn't huge, but it is absolutely brilliant. He's a man, possibly 5'5". If you want to give him, on a good day, maybe 5'7", depending if he was wearing lifts that day, I don't know. There's no time at which you think he does not belong on the same screen as either Randolph Scott or John Wayne. It's absolutely wonderful. He's funny. It's semi-serious in parts. Great, great little bit of filmmaking. And it just shows, that's another thing, by the way, that people don't realize, that having worked with Ted Healy, Shemp had no problem being up against much taller men like Jimmy Stewart, John Wayne, Randolph Scott, and several others. Lionel Stander was another one. He fits in. He has a way of occupying space on the screen that's perfect. He moved from the stage to the screen. I don't think there was any major problems. Just absolutely. I think for my money, I mean, he's one of the most entertaining figures on screen that I've seen in my life. And it's nothing to do with the size of the role. I mean, there's a famous Russian speaker once said, there's no such thing as a small part. There's only small actors. And Shemp, my friend, you bore that out beautifully.
Yeah, that's, and it's so cool to hear that. And you're going through the whole process. You said earlier that you talked to his
Yes.
daughter-in-law and you talked to his granddaughter, was it?
Well, actually, a couple of years ago, when I started the process, I went out to Los Angeles and I met with the eldest granddaughter. And when I say that, I hope she doesn't mind because she's not old. She's younger than I am. Everyone's younger than I am, apparently, when I go to Facebook. But anyway, she's a wonderful, wonderful person. She was very kind. She gave me a lot of personal information about him. We had lunch together, and we had a great time. It was one of, I don't know if you've been to Los Angeles recently or before COVID, but it was one of their blistering 103 plus days. Yeah. And I was walking about, burning up, but it was great. She was wonderful. I talked later to the daughter-in-law, who would remember, stuff just literally from that time, Jerry. And I've also been in contact with the youngest granddaughter, which is Sandy. They've all been an amazing help. Because the book, I should explain, initially, and one of the reasons it's taken so long, it was going to be strictly a biography. And I thought, well, that's going to be good for Stooge fans or those who want to learn more about Shemp. But what about the people who just don't know much about them, want to know a little more? I thought, well, why not try to make this an appreciation? So why not try to find actors today? And this is what has taken me so long and so much money, is to find people around today. Do they still remember him? And I'm amazed. I don't know if these names mean anything to you. Penn Jillette, Penn and Teller, went to Las Vegas, chatted with him very shortly. Not a very long conversation. Love Shemp. He's a Shemp man. I got Dick Cavett. He used to be a talk show host, the Thinking Man's talk show host. Great, love him. Gilbert Gottfried. I think he was the parrot in the Aladdin series with Robin Williams. Love it. He's an absolute Shemp fanatic. Shecky Green, 93 years old or 94. I got him a couple of years ago. Oh, he not only knew him, he used to occasionally show up at the house for some of the famous Shemp and Babe is his wife, parties they held. Uh, oh, Shecky loved him. He said, every time I saw Shemp Howard or a famous actress back then, Zazie Pitts, in a film, he said, I felt comfortable. And that's such a great feeling, you know. And he gave me some little insights about seeing Shemp back then, and you know, how Shemp loved the races, and it's so I got all these people. So the book, then I contacted my publisher. I said, I hope you don't mind, but this book now is a bio appreciation. It's going to be split up. It may be different. I have a tendency to write a lot differently than people. I've been a writer now for, let me see, 45 years, I believe. So I'm incredibly old, by the way. If Shemp were alive, he'd be my friend, because I'd be old too, and so would he. But I really want to make this something that people will look at and say, oh, really? This guy from this century, this stand-up comedian, really loves Shemp Howard? Oh, I wouldn't have thought that. And that's it. They all love Shemp. Out of the woodwork, I popped the Shemp fan. So there you go.
I mean, that's fantastic. And now I have to ask too, because this is your second book. You know, you did a book on Larry Fine, which is
Yes.
just so everybody can go check it out. It is called The Fine Art of Boxing, No Stooge in the Ring. And that's, as you said earlier, that's a partly fiction, partly realistic, or non,
yes,
I should call it, account of Larry Fine as a boxer.
Yeah. Yeah, the bottom line is a lot of Stooge fans know this quite well. As a youngster, he used to hang around his father's jewelry lab, you know, so there was dangerous chemicals around there. And one day he happened to be fooling around, saw something that he thought was a bottle of soda pop, decided he was going to take a drink. So his father hurled something across the room to knock it out of his hands. And unfortunately, the acid in this particular bottle didn't go down his throat, but went all over his arm.
Oh.
And so he was rushed to hospital. The first diagnosis from one doctor said, have to amputate. Okay, need a second opinion on this. So second opinion was, you need to build that arm up somehow. So the first idea was to take up a musical instrument, took up the violin. He actually became very good at the violin. Of all the Stooges, he's the musician. Anyway, he actually played, by the way, solo as a 9-year-old with the Philadelphia Orchestra, the junior orchestra, in front of all the biggies. And so the other thing was sports. And it kind of boiled down to a few choices. Tennis was one. And for some reason, he said, no, boxing. Let's do the boxing. Well, boxing was very, very popular. And in that generation, the best boxers in the world were, in fact, Jewish, like all the Stooges were. For example, the lightweight champion around then was Benny Leonard. Another guy obviously changed his name. So he did the training in that, and then he decided, I want to do some boxing. Well, he couldn't do that with his father and mother knowing, so he changed his name to, for the fight purposes, Kid Raffs. And so the kid used to get in there, did apparently very well. Trouble is, there's virtually no record of it anywhere. I went to Philadelphia. I went to the Benjamin Franklin Library. I couldn't find any records. Boxing aficionados have been trying forever to get some concrete. His brother Mo, actually, his nickname, he did write a book and mentioned it. So that's what Larry did. And so what I did is I fictionalized the account, self-published, managed to sell them all, which wasn't a lot. And the only way you can get it now is if you like ebooks, you can get it on Amazon. It's called The Fine, as in Larry Fine, Art of Boxing, No Stooge in the Ring. I had fun with it. But this book, by the way, on Shemp is being published. I do have an American publisher, Bear Manor Media, which specializes in entertainment books, a lot about, people who've been either forgotten or they were very big in their day, and it's sort of like, let's relive some of that. And it's been fun. I've had a lot of fun doing this. A lot of work, but a lot of fun.
Well, and so what for you? You've been writing for a long time, and what is it about the Three Stooges that for you? Is it just they're your favorite, or that pull you in and make you want to write about them and put it out there, that appreciation?
Well, it's funny, most people, when I wrote for newspapers, I did politics and things of that nature, but I also got the opportunity to do a lot of entertainment writing. I
So
was a
you've been
film
writing. So I don't mean to cut you off, but you've been writing
Sure.
Stooges for a long time then.
No,
No, no,
I would scribble things down about the
no,
Stooges.
no. I'm sorry.
And,
You said politicians. It was a just.
oh, I see. Yeah, we do have a few. We have a few Shemp, Curdy, Larrys, and Moes up in our House of Parliament here, and in fact, they're not as funny, and they don't look as funny. But yeah, that good one. Okay, you caught me on that. But my sort of ambition, once I still write. I should have retired ages ago, but my goals at one point, I thought, well, I want to have some fun. I don't want to write something that's overly too serious, because I promised myself in any podcast I do, I would not get political. I would not say, well, I think people need a laugh today because of the situation. I just said that, though, didn't I? Anyway, but I wanted to write something I thought people would enjoy and they'd get a bit of a chuckle over. The Larry book, I wished I had gotten a publisher first. I think that might have gone further. Mm-hmm. But however, the Shemp book, it was the publisher, Ben, who contacted me. He said, do you want a publisher? And I said, oh, you're kidding me. Of course I do. And I just, my whole purpose was, I want to get people to know a lot more about this man, what he did. And he seems to be, by the way, genuinely a nice person. And yes, did I go looking for all kinds of dirt and see if he had an affair with Marilyn Monroe? Of course I did. But apparently he didn't. He was a very, very solid family guy, loved his family and his wife and kids, and which is kind of nice, actually, when you think about Hollywood. And I just said to myself, I want to tell this story, and I want to make it, I want to show how much work he did, how sort of diverse he was, and at the same time, well, he was a regular guy. And what attracts me about the Stooges, I don't know. I think they're very clever. I think they're horribly underrated. Yeah. Like people will say, there's always been comparisons to other trios and duos, and I like them too. I mean, I love the Marx Brothers, Abbott and Costello, Laurel and Hardy, probably one of my best, one of my favorites. But the Stooges are always there. When we moved to Canada years ago, starting in 1958, these little shorts used to appear. And since I wasn't supposed to watch them, that would be great. Wait for the folks to get out of the house and bang, turn on some Stooges. And then every so often when I'd see Shemp, I thought, a lot of people would say, oh, it's a Shemp. And I'd say, oh, no, I want to see this. This is different. He looks even kind of tougher than Mo, given half the chance. And he's done some dramas. So there, he was a little bit tough. Good guy. Taught himself the piano, by the way, too.
I mean, he sounds fascinating. And, like, I've always been a fan of his, again, seeing him in the movies and just through Three Stooges. The Three Stooges, for me, it's amazing to see how they can kind of hit every generation. Even my 4, my 8-year-old, I'll sit down and on AMC, they'll play Three Stooges all morning. And I'll put it on, and they're laughing hysterically, just like I did when I was a kid. My dad did when he was a kid. So it's amazing how they kind of go through. I could show them both the Abbott and Costello. They like Laurel and Hardy. They like the Marx Brothers, but I think it's the more slapstick of it. The Three Stooges really just hit the funny bone, for lack of a better phrase.
And think about it, because the roots of the Three Stooges, like the embryonic group, if you will, which was, Ted Healy with the original three. You're talking about 1923, thereabouts. Not with Larry, but, with at least Mo and Shemp. That's almost 100 years ago. And they're still getting audiences. Yeah. I mean, it's remarkable. And it's sad in some respects that some of the other comedic acts have tended to fall by the wayside. Not totally, but aren't well sort of recognized as they once were. But the Stooges, I can mention the Stooges. And by the way, it's not true. Not all women just like the Stooges. I know some really mean women who just love the Stooges. You know, they're the kind who would stick their foot out and trip me in the middle of my own living room. So if you're out there and you're a female, and you know, it's no harm liking Stooges. You're liberated now. Love the Stooges like the rest of us.
That's well put. Everybody, the Stooges are for everybody, absolutely. And it's amazing. So we're looking at the book coming out, and you said sometime next year.
Yeah, I'm hoping as early as possible. With the COVID situation now, that sort of put the brakes on any personal appearances, which I would have loved to have done. But my goal especially would have been to have gone to New York and to California, because New York is where it all started for the Howard brothers, excuse me, and California is where it all ended for them. You know, I mean, those are the places I would love to have gone to. But having said that, what I'm hoping to do, and you know, even if you'd invite me back, when the book comes out, I'd love to do some more podcasts and say it's out there. Have a boo at it. And you know, in Canada, it's going to be a little difficult for me because I have a suspicion we're going to be still close to home sometime early next year. Sad to say, but just remember, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Shemp Howard is out there waiting to make you laugh. He's made me laugh. So. And
you know what? He's gonna make us fascinated with your book. You know, and him being the subject.
I hope so.
I'm very much looking forward to reading that. And absolutely, when it comes out, please come back on the show. We would love to have you and talk more about it.
And by the way, I should mention one small thing. Sorry to interrupt. I said he was a lifelong boxing fan. This is the sad part of it, I guess. He died on the way home from the fights, November 22nd, 1955. He basically he lit up a cigar, and he was about to talk, and his buddies were thinking he's going to tell a joke, and he collapsed. I think he collapsed into the lap of one of his friends and died. It wasn't a heart attack. I think it was a cerebral hemorrhage, I believe, something like that, at the age of 60. He lived longer than Curly. Curly only lasted until he was 48. But 1955, after doing 70 film shorts with the Stooges, the last four, as you probably know, were with the fake Shemp. That's the famous, the actor Joe Palma was used as a stand-in. And Joe Palma, by the way, appeared with Shemp in a couple of films, and he appeared with the other Stooges. So, but that night, November the 22nd, 1955, coming home from something they loved, which was the night of the fights, he collapsed and died. So that was the end. But it's not the end for me. Let's hope he lives on forever.
Absolutely, he will be. He will be in your book. Absolutely, and it's going to be just a fascinating read, and I'm very much looking forward to checking this out. And I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. And please, when the book is published, and please think of us, come back on the show and promote. We would love it.
Oh, I'd love to.
Absolutely. So, Geoff Dale, really appreciate you being on the show today. I've learned a lot about Shemp I didn't know before. And I'm a big Three Stooges fan, so I'm happy to know that stuff and learn even more. Great. So when your book comes out, we will be promoting it. Everybody, go check out, if you can, if it does get republished or if it's available online, go check out The Fine Art of Boxing, No Stooge in the Ring. I want to check it out. I can't wait to read it. And is there anything else you want to promote right now going on?
Not really. Most of my work right now is online. We're sort of in the virtual world, so all I can say to people in the States across the border, and including yourself, of course, stay safe, be happy, and mark 2021 as the year everything's going to get a little better, maybe a lot better, and my Shemp book will be out there to make you smile.
All right, that's a perfect way to end the show. And I want to thank everybody. Remember to subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. And if you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe and rate and review our podcast. We very much appreciate it. Until next time, I am the Scene Snob, Mick Manhattan. I'm joined by Geoff Dale today, writer of the new book and the only book about Shemp that will be out in 2021. And we will have all that info for you and more in our description and such below. So thanks again, everybody, and you take care.
This one's gonna be a hard one. No pun intended.
Down the catwalk every day, and maybe someday we'll go all the way.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. A sequel was all but inevitable, really.
We're going to go over this one time and one time only.